Ba weep gna weep nidibon! Welcome back to Transformers AutoBook Club, a weekly video and podcast series where myself, and occasionally a guest, read, discuss, and deep dive into one issue of the Marvel Transformers comics. If you've been following the show, you might know already that I still don't have internet in my apartment, so for now, this is another solo episode, but I promise the next 2 episodes do have my old friends Daniel and Sai back again to talk about some of the American issues. And then after that, it's going to be a Christmas special. So we're going to break our reading order just a little bit to fit in those stories because it's going to be weird if we follow the reading order and they come up in like August or something. There are a bunch of Christmas stories in the Transformers UK comics. It seems like the Marvel US comics didn't ever have any Christmas stories, but the UK ones had quite a few. And I looked those up on the invaluable TF wiki to see which ones we would be able to read. And it seems like the most early ones actually feature characters we haven't met yet. And so when I read those synopsises, I thought, synopses? When I read about what happens in those comics, I decided not to go for those ones. So I found a couple that we can read now, and it's not going to really spoil anything. So yeah, that's a bit of a schedule for you for the next few weeks. We'll have 2 episodes that cover the next issues of the US comic after the end of the original 4-issue run. And then after that, we're going to do a Christmas special. Since I'm talking about the schedule, I'll let you know now that after the Christmas special, I'm going to take a break for just a few weeks. It's going to be Christmas, I'm going to have friends visiting, and it's the holiday season, so it's going to be too busy for me to put out a proper episode, I think. Originally, I had planned to do some kind of stream in that break. I have a Blockies Action Edition Soundwave that is still in its box. I had been planning to save that and do a stream of me trying to build it. I don't have internet until January, so that's not going to happen over Christmas break. And also for my birthday, my good friend Dan bought me this really cute version of Optimus Prime, but it's as a girl, but you can also have her as a robot girl. It's really cool. I wanted to make that on a stream too. That's not going to happen, unfortunately, until at least January. And one more thing I wanted to try was to play some Transformers video games, which I'm a big fan of. Again, that will have to wait till January. During that Christmas break, I might have the time to put out like a supercut of the first 4 issues of the American stories, and then maybe I'll put together a supercut of the UK story so far, but at least it will keep things moving until I get back on track. And then I don't want to put a date on it just in case, but maybe by the 2nd or 3rd week of January, we should be back to our regular schedule. That stuff is all in the future though, so what do I have for you today? Today we're going to read our next UK story, which is Raiders of the Last Ark. It is a weird and wild story this week. This one takes the established story so far and then just goes wild with it. There's so much going on here. I actually have no idea which things from this story will be carried forward. And you'll see as we go along, but like so much of this had me yelling like, huh? What? When I did my first read through. But writing my notes on my second go around, I found some information on the Transformers wiki that puts everything into context and makes it make a little bit more sense. So I'm so glad I have found that. And I think I've shouted it out many times before on the show, but the Transformers wiki is invaluable information, and without it, I would have felt very differently about this story come the end. But you'll see as we go through. So, Autobuddies and Deceptichums, let's transform and roll out for Raiders of the Last Ark. Right at the beginning, we recap the very beginning of Transformers with a shot of the Ark and an explanation that the Autobots built it and that it was a technological marvel, impossibly fast and enormously powerful. But, it says, ultimately, it was still vulnerable to attack by the Decepticons, who breached its hull. The Decepticons were fully fueled for the battle, and the Autobots were not, though back in US issue 1, it really appeared that they just used lasers and stuff to destroy the meteors from the ship, so there was really no reason for everyone to be quite so exhausted. But whatever it was that happened, it tired them out, and the Decepticons were able to fight them into a stalemate because of that. And here's already where things start to diverge from what we thought we knew. In the first issue of the Marvel US comic, Prime does mention the Ark's intelligence system, which he refers to as Auntie. And at the time I said how weird a name that was, and that it kind of stuck out to me, and it felt weird and didn't quite fit as a name. But I said at the time, he's referring to Teletran 1. And that in the early days, Teletran was known as Auntie. We still are early on in the comic days here, so it's possible that it might change later than this, but for right now, actually, nobody has ever referred to it as Teletran 1. But this is the second mention, this time in the UK comics, of the Ark's intelligence, and that its actual name is Auntie. Not only that, but in the first US issue, Prime is the one who decides that they've done all they can and that their only choice is a suicidal collision course with a nearby planet. But this story slightly changes that. It's actually Auntie who runs calculations on possibilities and comes to the conclusion that destruction is their only option, to which Prime seems to agree because he presses that button, I guess confirming that that's what he wants to do. Go ahead from Prime given, the Ark smashed itself into the nearby, as yet uninhabited planet, which was Earth. The text box says that history is about to repeat itself, as the Decepticons begin another attack on the Ark, though it throws in a strange and confusing detail by calling it the last of the great Arks. The Ark was created because Cybertron was thrown out of its orbit and off its axis by the power being thrown around in the Cybertronian War. That power was of a strength so great that it sent the entire planet, which if I recall correctly is I think 9 times the size of Earth and made of metal, it sent the entire planet hurtling through space. It was headed for an asteroid belt, so the Autobots built the Ark to fly ahead of the planet and to clear the way for Cybertron to pass safely through. At that time, only one was mentioned. The simplest explanation for this, being called the Last Ark, is that they needed more than one to clear the whole asteroid belt. That's not too out there an idea, but it is, however, my idea, and not what was written in the comic before. But it makes this make sense, so perhaps that's what happened? Maybe what this means is going to be cleared up at some point in the future of the comic? Or maybe it'll never come up again. Whatever the case, calling it the Last Ark at this point in the story is a strange detail that doesn't really line up with the things that we've been told up until now. Anyway, that aside, Megatron is standing on a cliff above the Ark with some other Decepticons, and he yells, "Attack!" And Hound, I think that's the first appearance of Hound, says that someone is approaching fast and that they need to alert Optimus. And I guess they jump down from that cliff quickly, because right after that, Prowl says that they're under siege, which he misspells as Seige, S-E-I-G-E. The credits appear over on the left here. Simon Furman wrote the script. Art this issue is by both Mike Collins and Jeff Anderson. Letters are by Starkings. Colors are by Dina Hart again. And Sheila Cranner was once again the editor. Laserbeak rips a hole in the hull, and Buzzsaw cuts himself away in too. And what looks like maybe Prowl does a dramatic dive, and it looks like he's reaching for a gun that's close by. Laserbeak rushes Mirage. Maybe that's Brawn there. And a red one who... I tried, but who is that? Sideswipe? Cliffjumper? It's not important, but I want to get this down. The three of them kind of fall back as Laserbeak charges headfirst into them, but as Laserbeak gloats that the Autobots are already being defeated, there's a scrack, and it looks like Laserbeak is blown to pieces, but that might just be a strange colouring job. The position of the black parts in the air make it look like he's actually in one piece, but parts of his body have just kind of changed colour or become transparent. Prime was the one who fired at Laserbeak, and he says that if they call themselves warriors, they should arm themselves and follow him outside. It's not exactly clear who Optimus is calling yourselves. It's smack talk that sounds like it's for the Decepticons, but one, they are armed, and two, why would they follow him outside? So I guess Prime is talking to the other Autobots, but him doing that, like talking this way, feels super off. But Prime feeling off isn't unheard of for this period in the comics, and this was written by Simon Furman, who has done things in the past that I have found kind of out of character for Prime too. But it looks like this is Buzzsaw here, flying out of a hole in the Ark, saying that Laserbeak is out of the fight, and that the Autobots are coming. I guess following Prime out, so it really does seem that he was talking to the Autobots earlier. Prime instructs the other Autobots to choose a target and to make their shots count. Now here, outside the Ark, a firefight begins. And for some reason, the "waz" sound effect of the gun really made me laugh here. And Mirage on the right has a strange, like, half-mask looking thing on his face. The lower half of his face looks like it's a human in a costume. And he's punching someone I can't place, but they appear to have no eyes. I don't know if that's because he's punched them off or what, but Jazz appears through the hole in the Ark and says, "Let's see if Jazz can make things hot for you, Soundwave." And he fires, like, a full-on flamethrower at him. I think I mentioned this 2 episodes ago. I don't know what there even is of a fully metal robot to burn, but there must be something. Soundwave says that it's impressive, but that his armor can easily withstand Jazz's weapon, and that it's too bad that the same can't be said of Jazz. And he fires his shoulder gun thing right into Jazz's face. Ravage jumps on Windcharger and tells him that he's going to claw him to bits, and Windcharger tells Ravage that he's repulsed by him. But then he says, or should that be the other way around? And he uses his magnetic field to throw Ravage off himself. Ravage gets a cool close-up shot, with his ear sticking out of the panel too, which is a neat touch. And he tells Windcharger that the magnetic shielding that helps Ravage avoid detection can also be used to negate Windcharger's magnetic field, which I won't go into it too much, but raises all kinds of questions about how Ravage's magnetic field works and why it hides him from vision. How does a Transformer even see, anyway? Like, are there cameras in their eyeballs, or do they see in some other way, with sonar or radar or something? So far, we haven't seen Ravage interact with a human much, but would his power make him invisible to a human eyeball? I guess it's all really just down to what the plot demands and what the writer decides, right? But right now it seems to demand that Ravage's power can counter Windcharger's, and Ravage rushes on him again, telling Windcharger to prepare himself to meet his end. The artist very noticeably changes from Mike Collins to Jeff Anderson for this page. The style is totally different as we join Rumble and Sideswipe, who are duking it out. Rumble asks Sideswipe if he can see now why they call him Rumble, and he's actually just punching the ground to make it crack there, instead of using his, like, jackhammer piston thingies. The ground is splitting open, and it throws Sideswipe off balance, and Rumble boasts about how much tougher he is than Sideswipe, who starts to get up from his fall, saying, "You imbecile!" and that Rumble doesn't even understand the meaning of tough, but that he'll show him. And the first chapter ends on Sideswipe landing a very heavy punch on Rumble, who's falling backwards with his head thrown back and his mouth open. We shift focus to Prime now, who's thinking to himself that things are going badly, and that it looks like the Autobots are going to lose. Though he does mention that the Autobots are showing courage and spirit, which runs a little bit counter to the way he was talking to them earlier. That sounds more like the Prime I know. He thinks that the battle might be going differently had the Ark's defenses been working, but that they are controlled directly by Auntie. That thought causes him to shout, "Auntie, of course!" So I guess during all the repairs and stuff, he just kind of forgot about her. He says that up until now, they've only used the basic computer functions of the Ark, but Auntie was capable of more than that, and she was the Ark. He says, if I can get her to even a fraction of her operational capacity, the Decepticons are as good as dead. Megatron looks over his shoulder and sees Prime, who has entered like a control room, or whatever it is, to look for a way to activate Auntie. But it appears to him that Optimus is actually retreating from the fight, which is shocking to Megatron. So much so that he doesn't believe that that's what's happening, and he thinks to himself that Prime must have some kind of plan to push back and win the battle. And he figures that the Ark must be hiding some kind of super weapon. Whatever, Megatron says. He has to stop whatever it is that Optimus is attempting to do. At the bottom, we get the credits for this chapter, and for some reason, it's only in surnames this time, so script by Furman, art by Collins/Anderson, a new name this time, letters are by Aldrich, and Crenna is still the editor. Prime thinks that he's almost done setting Auntie back up, but that he doesn't know how badly she was damaged in the crash, which, don't forget, was 4 million years ago, so there's that too. Prime thinks that he needs time to do this right, and he types, "Wake up, Auntie, we need your help," in black on a green computer screen. That's so 80s. But there's a creech, and Prime yells and grunts, "Wah! Wah!" and the keyboard explodes in a green flash. In the next panel, there's a bit of smoke rising from it, as Megatron approaches Prime and tells him that he's wasting his effort, and that by now, Prime should know that struggling is futile. And Prime agrees with him. In his thoughts, he says that he's right, and that he's failed. It's not super clear to me what caused that explosion. It could just be that Auntie was damaged, or it could have been that Megatron fired a shot at the terminal. But either way, I don't think it makes much difference. There's a pink text box here, which is Auntie's thoughts, as she says, "I function," which is so close to one of the standout lines from the movie. She starts to, reassemble her logic and memory circuits by herself, somehow, okay, while Prime and Megatron grapple with each other. It doesn't take long for her to become fully operational, and when she does, she detects activity in the nearby vicinity. So she activates herself and pronounces, "Cease hostilities forthwith, I am the Ark, I am Auntie." And then, dramatically, she appears as a giant yellow or golden head with green eyes. She's up above Megatron and Prime, and relative to her, they look a bit small, so I imagine she's really, really big. From the bottom of her head, there are 5 kind of pipes or something. They look like speed lines, but they have sparkles inside, and then close to the bottom of them, they have these horizontal lines that make them look like metal tubes. I don't know what Auntie is supposed to be. It's never really cleared up, actually. Before the end of this story, we still won't find out what this thing exactly is. So it might be a hologram or something, but that doesn't explain the pipes. Maybe they're what's projecting her, but she couldn't have just been here as a physical object like that all along, right? They would have seen that before. It's all pretty strange. She also has this very stern look on her face with this severe downward eyebrows. She's quite scary. Outside, the scraps we saw in the previous chapter are still going on, when suddenly something sparks Rumble's hand, and he says, "Hey, what the?" And suddenly, everyone outside is flung through the air, and they slam into the side of the Ark. Prowl, maybe it's just the angle here, but he looks insanely jacked. It's really cool though. I really like the close-ups that Collins does of these characters. They look really cool when he decides to draw one really big. Macho Prowl asks just what is going on here. Auntie says, "There, that takes care of that," and addresses Megatron and Optimus to tell them that she can see why she was contacted for help. But, she says, none of that fighting was necessary. She's going to resolve the conflict for them. Then, furrowing that brow of hers even further, she says that she'll hear both sides of their argument and then just destroy the less deserving side. Prime tries to reason with her, and he says that her memory circuits must not be working correctly. He's the Autobot leader, and they built her. He explains that the Decepticons are their enemies, but Megatron sees this as an opportunity and butts in, saying that Prime is lying and that the Decepticons are in the right here. The Autobots are trying to deceive her. Auntie yells, "Silence!" And she says that nobody built her, and nobody is going to fool her either. She's going to be the judge. One faction is going to survive, and one isn't, and that is just how this is going to go. Then she says, "Let the trial begin." So this one's pretty wild. Chapter 1 retconned the crash on Earth to say that Auntie was the one who kind of made that call. At least she ran the numbers and suggested to Prime that it was kind of the only viable option, to which he agreed. That by itself isn't such a huge change, really, when you think that Auntie was just the ship's computer. But it's a huge change if she was this giant floating head this entire time, yet didn't appear in the first issue at all. That she's decided to be the judge like this is weird too. She's just been woken up, can't remember anything, and again, I know it's just because it's the story that Furman wanted to tell, and that it's what the plot demanded, but instead of being confused or just indiscriminately destroying everyone, or even just ordering them all out to be left alone, she wants to hold this trial? It's bizarre. Later on, we'll come to see the things that kind of make this make a bit more sense. I can kind of see what Furman was going for, and I can appreciate some of the ways he got to this idea and this story. There's also always the possibility of things that he's doing here being set up for later, and for things that will be continually featured in the stories. Unfortunately, that stuff is stuff I won't know about until we keep reading on, so as it is for now, coming off the back of The Enemy Within, this is totally different, and it's just a little jarring to me because of that, especially since it's the same writer. This is kind of bonkers, and it's only going to get more bonkers from here, so let's press on, shall we? Because of what we learned earlier about Ravage and Windcharger's abilities, when it comes to magnetism, repulsion, or the inversion of magnetism, they're the only two aboard or close to the Ark who are not affected by Auntie's magnetic assault. They walk together in an uneasy truce, which has been forced upon them by the current situation. Ravage comments on their shaky alliance, saying that he doesn't like working with others at the best of times, which totally fits for him. He's an aloof character who often is literally invisible to the others. Of course he prefers working solo. And he trails off to have to fight alongside a puny Autobot. Windcharger cuts him off by saying, "Silence, you aggravating creature." He says that he doesn't like this situation any more than Ravage does, but there's nothing either of them can do about it for the time being, and he tells Ravage he should just stay on the lookout for, and then he yells, "Danger!" And some of Auntie's defense system kicks in, I guess, and the whole way they're walking through is kind of crisscrossed with these lasers or something. Windcharger sarcastically throws Ravage's earlier claim that we didn't actually see, but we get it from context, that he could deal with anything that Auntie throws at him, back at him. And Ravage retorts with, "Shut it, rust bucket, and watch," as he nimbly dodges through the laser fire and rips the turret from the wall with his teeth. He turns to Windcharger and asks, "Impressed?" But Windcharger just says that Ravage should have been paying attention in the first place. Ravage lets that slide though, because he says that he feels a massive electrical build-up, and begins to say, "We'll have to," but he can't finish that sentence, and both he and Windcharger are zapped by that build-up, and the panel edges all turn into this jagged lightning bolt kind of shape. Ravage throws back his head, and his eyes flash yellow, while behind him, Windcharger is surrounded by electrical energy and is falling back. As Windcharger begins to lose consciousness, his mind wanders of its own accord back to a memory of the events up to this point. He and Ravage had been throwing hands at each other, the fight was going poorly for the Autobots, and while he and Ravage were tussling, Optimus Prime went back inside the Ark, followed by Megatron. Not long after that was when the Ark suddenly and mysteriously magnetized, and everybody besides himself and Ravage had been pinned down. Only Auntie, he realizes, could have the power to do that, so she must have been reactivated. So it wasn't even the sudden laser fire that tipped our guy off, it was passing out that finally let him put stuff together. That's not a technique I can say I've ever tried, but whatever works for you, I guess, Windy. The narration says that Ravage and Windcharger's tenuous agreement might have let them stand a chance against Auntie, but now that they've been fried, it trails off, as Windcharger seems to lose his grip on consciousness. And his last words before passing out are, "Optimus, I failed you." It says if Windcharger had been able to see what was going on in the control room now, he might have felt justified in his concerns. Prime pleads with Auntie to believe him that she brought the Autobots to Earth from Cybertron, and that she must have been damaged, he says, in the battle with the Decepticons, which conveniently leaves out the catastrophic crash into a volcano, which Auntie herself brought about, but I guess he's trying his best to paint the Decepticons as the bad guys here. Megatron counters by saying that that isn't what happened, and the Decepticons were on a mercy mission, whatever that means, and that the Autobots sabotaged it and forced Auntie to crash. She listens in the background, one eye just ever so slightly smaller than the other one, and it makes her look like she's absolutely seething internally, but trying to keep a neutral expression. I don't know if that was intentional, but yeah, she looks so angry to me. Prime suggests that the easiest solution, if Auntie's memory is damaged, would be to look at the Ark's own tapes, which will show her what happened. But she doesn't let Prime finish his explanation and yells, "Silence! There's nothing wrong with me." And she says that she's heard enough and that now she's going to make her judgment, reminding both of them that the innocent party will be allowed to go free and that she'll destroy the side she decides is guilty. Prime is in disbelief at how different Auntie's behavior is than what she was designed and built for, and he blames Megatron's fusion cannon, saying that it must have scrambled her circuits. Megatron doesn't even reply to that directly, he just notes that it looks like Prime is unsure that the verdict is going to go his way. But Prime calls Megatron a fool and says that he doesn't think that either side, guilty or not, will really be allowed to walk away. He thinks that Auntie is a megalomaniac and she's just toying with them. Either the two of them break out of the stasis field that she's got them caught in, or all of them are going to be killed. Megatron agrees to this without any hesitation, which is so unlike him. I feel like Megatron is absolute in his convictions, at least when he makes statements. Let's not pretend he doesn't retreat from every single fight the second he takes even a little ding. But here in this stasis field, alone with Prime in private, where nobody is going to ever know it, he amicably goes along with what Prime says, as if he's like raised a good point that he hadn't considered, and he just changes his mind. Almost certainly this is unintentional, but I really like that, yeah, in private and only in private, Megatron can actually be reasoned with and made to question himself. He says that he may be able to set the two of them free, and we leave them there for a moment to join Ravage, who's waking back up from his shock. He says that he managed to shut down his systems before the electricity did its worst, but that it looks like Windcharger won't be able to save himself. He says to himself how easy it would be to finish him off now that he's laying prone, or to just leave him to Auntie. But then he says, curses! And there's a bit of a time cut to where Windcharger is thanking Ravage for having repaired his circuits. Ravage is having none of it though, and he says that Windcharger's words are only making him regret having done so. The two continue trying to make their way through the Ark, but it says here that their teamwork saves them from destruction time and time again. And we have a panel here where it looks like Ravage is acting as a distraction for an armed security drone, while Windcharger hides close by. I guess to take it out while it's busy chasing Ravage, it says at last they find the door that should lead them to Auntie, and hopefully answers to what is going on. Ravage says he doesn't like it. After all Auntie has done to stop the pair of them, it doesn't sit right with him at all that there's just an armored door. Ravage is totally right, because in the next panel, a loud voice announces, "Turn, intruders, turn and face Guardian." And there's this absolute unit of an Autobot. This guy is huge. He looks a bit like Bumblebee if he decided to take up bodybuilding. He's yellow and silver with like extremely muscular looking arms and big bulky legs and what look like cloven hooves for feet. This part is so wildly off the rails for me. Like, this makes no sense whatsoever to me. And it kind of breaks the rest of this entire story. The Autobots built this ship, right? And Auntie herself. The only way that this guy could be here is if they also built him. But why would they do that? If they could build these, like, hulking things, and the ship has a very sophisticated computer, and was basically sentient, why did anyone else have to be aboard the Ark at all? The only mental gymnastics I can do to make this make any possible sense is that Auntie went rogue after waking up, and built this guy in secret quickly? But again, you have a sentient computer that can build other sentient robots. Nobody else needs to be here then. This was all for the drama, right? To make this last page and this cliffhanger exciting. But come on, if this guy is here, the Autobots can just flatten the Decepticons with him. Like, this is so crazy to me. And that's all I can say about it for now without spoiling things. But let's keep rolling here and find out what happens next. The credits in this chapter are the same, so we'll skip over those if you don't mind. And in chapter 3, we're right in with what is, I think, of all the wild details thrown into this story, the wildest, most out of nowhere, totally insane part of this entire story. Prime and Megatron are still being held in kind of a stasis field by Auntie, awaiting her judgment. Megatron concentrates, and, it says, a strange, unearthly energy flows around him, threatening to engulf him. In the art, he's gritting his teeth, and his fist is all clenched, like he's going Super Saiyan or something. But it says, he is Megatron, and he will make that power serve him. Which, that's a cool line, come on. There's a really cool picture of him here too, actually, with this black energy, like, swirling around. Prime thinks to himself, about Megatron, remember, so you know he's really, really impressed. Incredible! He's actually doing it. He's tapping the energy of a black hole in space. Let's pause here for a moment. Autobuddies and Deceptichums. What? Like, what? This is so out of nowhere, and it feels so random that Megatron can do this. He has never done it before, and there's just no explanation for this. It makes Megatron look like this incredibly powerful, celestial, cosmic entity. I was so completely thrown by this, more than anything else we've read so far. I had to go right to the wiki after I finished reading this issue, and once again, huge thanks to the Transformers wiki. It's invaluable as a source of information. I'm not sure I would have found this out on my own. So, what in the Allspark is going on here? This is kind of all a misunderstanding of something that is actually, and funnily enough, literally canon. Bob Budiansky wrote a full-length bio of Megatron, which was published later than this comic was, in something called the Transformers Universe, a kind of lore guide to Transformers, which I had never heard of until now. I need to check if that's included in our PDFs/hardcover books, because it seems like it was published as a comic too. I'd like to get my hands on this. Anyway, Bob Budiansky's bio says that Megatron can use his internal circuitry to connect his fusion cannon interdimensionally with a black hole, where it can draw on antimatter as its power source. So that's, like, okay, that's wild, and I'm so curious about how and when this comes about, but it's also pretty clear, right? So why did Furman misunderstand this and go in this direction with the story? Well, Megatron's tech specs, which were included with the toy, which, remember, a lot of these early comics and their artworks are based on, because the writers and artists didn't yet have the official specs of each Transformer, Those tech specs include this information, but it's shortened to fit onto the tech specs card, and it doesn't specifically point out that it's via the fusion cannon that Megatron can do this. The specs say that Megatron can link up interdimensionally to a black hole, and to draw antimatter from it to use as a weapon. So that's what's going on here. A totally understandable misunderstanding, and a totally sensible way to use that ability with the information that Simon Furman had available to him at the time. Later, in an interview, when Furman was asked about this scene, he said that since that information was included in Megatron's specs card, which came with the toy, he felt that it was important to show Megatron using that ability. Thank you, Simon Furman. Finally, someone sees the need for some kind of parity between the toys and other Transformers media. So this is an extremely odd sequence, but it's the result of a misunderstanding. But it's like a pearl forming around a grain of sand in an oyster. We can see now where the core of it came from. Not that Megatron being able to use his fusion cannon to link to a black hole isn't bloody insane, but at least that explains this scene. I really hope the story of how he gets the ability to do that and to eventually use it comes up in more detail later, because that sounds awesome. That's back to Megatron having his penchant for having these moves that are on a colossal scale. I love that shit too. Apropos of nothing, I'm currently playing Final Fantasy 16, and if you're a fan of scale like me, check that out. I'm not particularly a Final Fantasy fan, but this game is really scratching my megalophilia itch. The soundtrack is just astonishing too. Anyway, back to Megatron and Prime. After our scenic detour, Prime thinks that if Megatron can release all this energy through the stasis field, the mix of matter and antimatter, sure, why not, right? To quote the great Thomas Dolby, science! The mixture of matter and antimatter will destroy Auntie, and he thinks that it's a drastic measure, but it's what they have to do. Auntie is too dangerous to do otherwise. But he also thinks that Megatron's plan to do this could prove just as dangerous as anything Auntie could do. But he's snapped out of his ruminations by a crash sound, and Prime exclaims, "What the?" Auntie is surprised too. She yells, "What?" But we don't find out what startled her and Prime just yet, because now we're back with Guardian, Windcharger, and Ravage. Windcharger tells Ravage to go and deal with, quote, the mistress of the house, while he deals with the Guardian. And Ravage is kind of leaping away there, and we can see Windcharger with one hand on the Guardian's chest, and Guardian is falling backwards. Windcharger's other fist is raised, so it looks like he just pounced on Guardian and clobbered it into submission. And that's it for Guardian. For all that build-up. The page turn reveal, the cliffhanger in the last issue, one panel of him looking injured, and he's gone. My initial reaction to that was, well, what was the point of all that then? But that little bit of added context about Furman that we got earlier, because of Megatron, it really gave me pause. He added in that stuff about the black hole, because it was specified in the lore he'd been given. He didn't pull it out of nowhere. That makes me wonder if we'll see the Guardian or Auntie again, because even if Auntie, in this form, is something that he created, he didn't make her up from nothing either. She's referenced in passing, by name, in the very first issue. And at that time, I said something like, oh, they named Teletran 1 Auntie early on, that's weird. And since that time, nobody has ever referred to the Ark's AI again, or ever said the name Teletran. So even if all this is a creation by Furman, he's once again taking what's already been established and then extrapolating on it and expanding on it. So I think either they'll come back again, or he's done his best to expand on the lore as already written. So, excuse the diatribe, but long way of saying I kind of have faith that Simon Furman knows, if not exactly what he's doing, which is because the official designs and even canons haven't been solidified or told to him yet, but in writing terms. When it comes to story crafting, he knows what he's doing, I think. And thank goodness we got that additional context about him earlier on, because I think that how I'm thinking about this now would be a lot different without having had that. I just don't think that Guardian is some bonkers thing that he made up for the sake of a couple of panels. That it doesn't really fit with what I know now about how he's going about things. This got like super analytical and very meta when what we're looking at here is the story, but I think all of that stuff and all that added context is important when you're looking at this critically as we are and trying to pick it apart, you know, as an adult almost 40 years later. Not the intended audience, sure. And maybe it's really weird to kind of compare this to the current Transformers comics and expect it to be as well thought out and as impactful all the time. But Transformers endured in popularity for 40 years for a reason, right? Like, there's something in here that works for adults. But important as it is, back to the story. Guardian down, Ravage throws himself at great speed at Auntie, who begins to react, but not fast enough, and as she yells, "No!" Ravage leaps into her open mouth, and it says, Auntie dies for the second time. But exactly how she was killed, and what she even was really, remain a mystery to me. The panel of Ravage here shows him doing something to Auntie, but it doesn't clarify anything. He's surrounded by yellow, and in the panel there are what look like bubbles, so maybe there's like some kind of liquid in there, and there also are a few sparks and a sound effect. Is this Auntie's stomach? Is it whatever her hologram was made of? If that's what she even was, I genuinely have no idea what's going on here at all with Auntie. Like, I don't know what she is, what she's made of, and now she's dead, so did it matter anyway? Also, Ravage is not really doing anything. He's jumped in there, and she dies. I got nothing. I don't know. If you have any idea what this is supposed to be, or like what's supposed to be going on here, please comment and let me know, because honestly, I'm so lost on this point. It's so abrupt as well, as was Guardian's defeat, but I guess page count constraints, and possibly they weren't allowed to give the story more additional parts. I don't know. It's all very oddly paced. Ravage choking Auntie means that her stasis field is disrupted, and Prime and Megatron fall out of it onto the floor, and they're in like some kind of cave too, so like the room housing Auntie has somehow fused with the volcano in some way. But Prime and Megatron were outside the Ark, right? And then Prime remembered about Auntie, turned around, and went into that room kind of directly from outside. So I need to see a blueprint of the Ark, because why did it take Ravage and Windcharger so long to get to the room they thought Auntie was in, and they went this like completely other route that was really long? I don't know. That doesn't seem to add up really, but we're nearing the end, so let's just keep going. Megatron is able to land on his feet, but Prime lands on his forearm with a grunt. Megatron says that all that preparation he did with the black hole energy was unnecessary after all, now that Auntie is gone, but that it would be a shame to waste it. And his hand glows, and I desperately wanted him to backhand Prime with that, but he doesn't get the chance, because Windcharger, who just got himself out from under the fallen Guardian, sees what's going on and uses what he calls the smallest, tightest magnetic field he's able to create to pull Megatron away from Prime. I guess the description of smallest and tightest is supposed to explain why Prime isn't also being repulsed, but sure. Windcharger's magnetic repulsion is so strong that it throws Megatron up and out of the Ark, bursting through the ceiling. And not only that, through the surrounding rock of the volcano. I know I literally just said that Furman doesn't seem to do these things just to do them. This is obscenely strong though, and so useful when all your enemies happen to be giant metal robots. Windcharger could probably launch someone into orbit with this, or at least high enough that coming back down would seriously damage or kill them. If we see him do this ever again, I'll be surprised and impressed. And on the next page, that's what the narration says too. Windcharger should have been able to fling Megatron into space. It says he often overlooks small details like, and it trails off there as Windcharger says, "Systems overload, I'm burning up," and collapses. Optimus silently looks around at the destruction aboard the Ark. Later, Gears explains to Prime that once the other Decepticons saw Megatron's exit, they immediately retreated. Yep, sounds about right. He asks why Prime is so glum. They won, shouldn't he be pleased? Prime asks about the cost of their victory. A whole bunch of their allies need major repairs, and their energy reserves are lower than they've ever been. Rebuilding Auntie will take a long time. What are they going to rebuild? I seriously don't know what it was that Ravage destroyed. Prime says that is if we dare to take the risk of reactivating her. So Furman's teasing us a bit there. Maybe she will come back later. Anyway, he says, this moment of peace will be fleeting and temporary, and we see that etched into the wall of the Ark is a message. We'll be back. And the very last thing we get here is a continuity note that says that the Decepticons did return and that it was seen in issue 8, meaning that this story was published after that, but it's chronologically before it. But we're also using a new reading order here, so I don't want to confuse myself trying to work all that out. So that's it for Raiders of the Last Ark. A bizarre story with lots of strange little details, but based on things that have come before. And I think set up for future stuff. I really think Furman knows what he's doing and he's going to call on these elements again later. I would like to know where that interview question was taken from, because I would like to know if they asked anything about what Auntie is and how they came up with that design, what she's made of, and how it could be that she's like that on the Ark, but they completely forgot about her. Maybe we'll never get those answers. We'll see. All that's left for me to do now is to tell you about what we're going to read next week, which is the infamous issue number 5 of the Transformers from Marvel US. It's the one with Shockwave on the cover, and it says, "The Transformers" at the top, and then he's written on the wall, "are all dead." This one is one that I know fans of the series were really excited about, and they put as a stretch goal for the Kickstarter like a reproduction of this issue. It's the first issue post the initial 4-issue run ending. It picks up on a big cliffhanger, and there's Shockwave there looking just badass on the front cover. So I'm really excited to read that one. And next week I'll have a guest with me, so tune in for that one. We're finally hopping back over the pond to the Marvel US comics. It's been a while, and I'm excited to get back to reading some of those. As I mentioned at the start of the show, the next episode after that will be another Marvel US comic, and then we'll have the Christmas stories coming up. So yeah, that's the plan for the next few episodes. And now the boring bit that I'm sure everybody skips, but I need to do it anyway. As always, if you enjoyed the episode, please help me out. give me a thumbs up on YouTube, throw me a sub if you haven't already, share it with all your friends who you think will enjoy the show, and anywhere that you think there are people that might enjoy it. If you happen to be part of a Discord or a Reddit I don't know about, that would be really helpful. As always, comments from you guys are so welcomed. I'll always reply. I'm always happy to see them. And the subscriber count has been going up and up and up every week. It's slow going, like only a few at a time, but it doesn't matter to me. Every single one of you make me smile. You can also subscribe on your podcast app of choice, and you can leave me a review there. That would be lovely. I'm always looking for new guests to join me on the show. I know that everybody that has been on before has said that they would like to come back, and I would love to do some more episodes with everybody, but I would like to give the opportunity first to people who haven't done it before I extend my invitation to those who have done it already. As I always say, whoever you are, you're always welcome. It doesn't matter to me if you've done a podcast before, how much you know or don't know about Transformers. All you need to do is bring good vibes, be down for a good time, and to make some silly jokes and have a giggle, really. If being on the show sounds like something that you would like to do, you can reach out to me on Blue Sky. I'm at ClarionComicsJP. You can leave me a comment on the YouTube video. I'm sure I'll see that. And you can hit me up on the Discord. Make sure that you join that. Even if you don't want to be on the show, you're always welcome to come and chat with us about Transformers. We talk about all kinds of things there. Figures, the shows, games, all kinds of Transformers stuff. So whatever is your bag, you'll find somebody to talk about it with there. So that's all for this time. I hope I'll see you in the next one. And until then, take care, be kind, and do good. Till all are one.